Let me start by asking you something very simple. Have you ever felt a slight pressure in your chest? Not sharp pain, just a feeling that something isn't quite right. Or maybe you've noticed that climbing stairs, something you used to do without thinking, now leaves you a little more tired than before. You pause for a moment. You catch your breath. And then you tell yourself, well, I'm getting older. That's normal. But is it really? You see, this is where many people over the age of 60 make a very common mistake. They assume that every change in their body is simply due to aging. And while it's true that the body changes over time, not everything should be ignored. Sometimes, these small changes are not just age. Sometimes, they are early signals. Signals that your body is trying to get your attention. Let me explain this in a very simple way. Think of your body like a home. If there's a small leak in a pipe, you might first notice a tiny damp spot on the wall. It doesn't seem serious. It's easy to ignore. But over time, that small leak can turn into a much bigger problem. Now, your arteries, the blood vessels that carry blood from your heart, work in a similar way. When they begin to narrow or become blocked, the body doesn't always send loud, obvious warnings right away. Instead, it sends subtle signs. A little tightness here, a bit of breathlessness there, a sense of fatigue that feels unusual. And here's the important question I want you to think about. What if these small signs are not random? What if they are early warnings that your arteries are slowly becoming clogged? Clogged arteries simply mean that the pathways carrying blood are becoming narrower. And when that happens, your heart has to work harder. Your organs may receive less oxygen. And over time, this can lead to more serious problems if not addressed. Now, I don't say this to alarm you. I say this to help you become aware, because awareness is where prevention begins. And the earlier you notice these signs, the more options you have to support your health. Hello, I'm Dr. Robert Miller, and I want to take a moment to speak to you not just as a doctor, but as someone who has spent years carefully studying how the body changes after the age of 60. A large part of my work involves reviewing medical research, but more importantly, I focus on translating that research into something practical, something you can actually use in your daily life. Because let's be honest, medical information can often feel overwhelming. Too many complicated terms, too many numbers, too many things that don't clearly answer the question most people have. What does this mean for me? That's exactly what we're going to do here today. We're going to take a complex topic, clogged arteries, and break it down into simple, clear ideas. No confusing language, no unnecessary details, just straightforward guidance that you can understand and apply. And more importantly, I want you to feel informed, not overwhelmed. Because when you understand what's happening inside your body, you can make better decisions. And those small decisions, over time, can have a meaningful impact on your health. Before we go further, let me say something briefly. If you find this kind of explanation helpful, simple, calm, and based on real medical understanding, you might consider subscribing to the channel. It allows us to continue sharing this kind of information for people just like you. People who want clear answers without confusion, and people who want to take care of their health in a practical, realistic way. Now, let's talk about what you're going to learn today, because I want you to know exactly what to expect. First, we're going to explain what clogged arteries actually are. And I promise, we'll keep it simple. No complicated medical language. Just a clear picture of what's happening inside your body. Then, we'll talk about why this becomes more common after the age of 60. Because this is something many people don't fully understand. It's not just about age. It's about how changes build up over time. Next, and this is very important, we'll go through the early warning signs. These are the signals your body may already be giving you. Signs that are often overlooked or brushed aside. But once you recognize them, you start to see your health in a very different way. And finally, we'll talk about simple daily habits, not extreme changes, not complicated routines, just realistic steps that may help support your heart and your blood vessels. Things you can actually do, starting today. So as you listen, I want you to keep one simple idea in mind. Your body is always communicating with you. The question is, Are you listening to what it's trying to say? Let's take a closer look together. Let's take a moment and go back to the basics, because once you understand this clearly, everything else will make much more sense. Your arteries are like soft, flexible tubes. Their job is simple. They carry blood from your heart to every part of your body. And this blood is extremely important. It carries oxygen, which your cells need to survive. And it carries nutrients, which your organs need to function properly. Now imagine this. When you were younger, these tubes were wide open and flexible. Blood could flow through them easily, without any resistance. It's like turning on a clean water pipe in your home. Everything flows smoothly. But over time, something begins to change. Very slowly, almost quietly, material starts to build up inside these arteries. This material is called plaque. Now, plaque may sound like a complicated medical word, but let's simplify it. Think of it as a sticky mix. It's made up of fat, cholesterol, calcium, and other substances that travel in your blood. At first, this buildup is very small, so small that you won't feel anything. There are no symptoms, no warning signs. But over the years, this plaque continues to collect along the inner walls of your arteries, layer by layer, little by little. And this is where the problem begins. Because as more plaque builds up, the space inside the artery becomes narrower. It's like a pipe slowly filling up with debris. At first, the water still flows, but not as freely. Then, as the buildup increases, the flow becomes weaker, and eventually, it can become restricted. In your body, this means less blood is reaching important areas, less oxygen, less nourishment. Now let me ask you something. What happens if your heart doesn't get enough blood, or your brain, or your legs? The answer is simple. Those parts of your body don't function the way they should. This is why clogged arteries can affect different areas in different ways. In the heart, it may lead to chest discomfort. In the brain, it may cause dizziness. In the legs, it may cause pain when walking. And here's something very important I want you to remember. This process does not happen overnight. It develops slowly, often over many years. And most of the time, it happens silently. No pain, no obvious signs, until one day your body starts to give you small signals. And that brings us to an important question. Why does this become more common after the age of 60? Let's look at that more closely. As we age, our bodies go through natural changes. Some of these changes are visible. Others happen quietly inside us. One major change happens in the arteries themselves. When you're younger, your arteries are flexible. They expand and contract easily with each heartbeat. Think of a soft rubber tube that can stretch and bounce back. But as you get older, these arteries begin to lose that flexibility. They become stiffer, more rigid, more like an old pipe than a soft tube. And when arteries are stiff, blood does not flow as easily. The heart has to work harder to push blood through. At the same time, the inner lining of your blood vessels becomes more sensitive. This lining is very important. It helps keep blood flowing smoothly, but over time, it can become damaged. And when that happens, it becomes easier for plaque to stick and build up. Now let's add another layer to this. Think about your life over the past 40 or 50 years. Your diet, your level of physical activity, stress, sleep patterns. All of these factors slowly influence your blood vessels. It's not about one bad meal or one stressful day. It's about the accumulation over time. So even if you felt perfectly fine in your 40s or 50s, by the time you reach your 60s, these changes can begin to show. This is why many people are surprised. They say, "I've never had any problems before," and then suddenly symptoms begin to appear. But in reality, the process has been developing quietly for years. Now let's talk about something very important, the early warning signs. Because your body often tries to communicate with you before a serious problem happens. The challenge is, these signs are usually subtle, easy to ignore. Let's go through them together. First, chest discomfort. This doesn't always feel like sharp pain. In many cases, it feels like pressure or heaviness. Some people describe it as if something is sitting on their chest. It may come and go. You might feel it during activity, and then it disappears when you rest. Have you ever felt something like that? even briefly, that's something you should pay attention to. Next, shortness of breath. You might notice that simple activities, like walking, climbing stairs, or carrying groceries, leave you more breathless than before. You may find yourself stopping more often, taking breaks. This can happen when your heart is not getting enough blood, and therefore cannot pump efficiently. Then there is fatigue, not just normal tiredness, but a deeper kind of fatigue. You wake up and still feel low on energy, or simple tasks feel more exhausting than they used to. This can happen when your body is not receiving enough oxygen through the blood. Another important sign is pain in the legs, especially when walking. You may feel cramping or discomfort in your calves, but when you stop and rest, it improves. This is a classic sign of reduced blood flow to the legs. You may also notice dizziness or lightheadedness, a feeling that your balance is slightly off, or that your head feels light. This can happen when blood flow to the brain is not as steady as it should be. And finally, cold hands or feet, even when the room is warm. Poor circulation can reduce the warmth in your extremities. Now here's the key point I want you to remember. Many people experience one or more of these signs, and they ignore them. They say, "It's just age." But your body is not speaking randomly. These signs are often early messages, gentle warnings, and the sooner you recognize them, the better chance you have to take action early. So let me leave you with this question. Have you noticed any of these changes in yourself recently? Because sometimes, awareness is the first and most important step toward protecting your health. Now, before we move forward, I want to briefly connect what we've been discussing with what medical research has shown. Because it's one thing to understand these ideas in simple terms, but it's also reassuring to know that this understanding comes from years of careful study. Researchers from places like Harvard Medical School and organizations such as the American Heart Association have looked closely at this condition, what we call atherosclerosis, which simply means the buildup of plaque inside the arteries. And what they've consistently found is something very important. This process often develops slowly, over many years, without clear symptoms in the beginning. In other words, your body may be going through these changes quietly, long before you feel anything noticeable. That's why awareness matters so much, because if you wait for strong symptoms, the condition may already be more advanced. But if you understand the early signals and what's happening inside, you have a chance to respond earlier, and that can make a meaningful difference. Now let's take a closer look at what is actually happening inside your body. I'm going to explain this in a very simple way. Think of this as three main processes, three things happening together over time. Let's start with the most important one, plaque buildup. As we mentioned earlier, plaque is made up of fats, cholesterol, calcium, and other substances in your blood. Now here's something interesting. Your body doesn't see this buildup as something normal. It actually treats it like a small injury. So what does the body do when there's an injury? It tries to repair it. But in this case, instead of fixing the problem, the repair process actually adds more material to the artery wall, layer by layer. Over time, this creates a thicker and thicker buildup. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine you have a small scratch on a pipe, and instead of cleaning it, you keep adding layers of tape over it. At first, it seems fine. But eventually, the inside space becomes smaller. That's exactly what's happening in your arteries. And here's why this matters, especially after 60. By this stage in life, this buildup has often been happening for decades. So what was once a small issue now becomes large enough to affect blood flow. And that's when symptoms may begin to appear. Now let's talk about the second process, reduced elasticity. This simply means your arteries are becoming less flexible. When you're younger, your arteries are soft and stretchy. They expand when blood flows through, and then return to their normal shape. This helps maintain smooth blood flow. But as you age, these arteries begin to stiffen. They lose that natural flexibility. Think of the difference between a brand new rubber hose and an old, hardened pipe. The new hose bends easily. The old pipe does not. Now imagine trying to push water through both. Which one requires more pressure? The stiff one. And that's exactly what your heart experiences. It has to work harder to push blood through less flexible arteries. Over time, This added strain can affect how efficiently your heart functions. And again, after the age of 60, this stiffness becomes more noticeable. It's a natural part of aging, but when combined with plaque buildup, it creates a bigger challenge for your circulation. The third process is something called inflammation. Now, this might sound like a complicated term, but let's simplify it. Inflammation is your body's response to irritation or damage. It's like a quiet signal that something isn't quite right. In small amounts, it can be helpful, but when it becomes long-term, it starts to cause problems. In the arteries, chronic or ongoing, inflammation can damage the inner lining. And when that lining is damaged, it becomes easier for plaque to stick and grow. So it's almost like creating a rough surface inside the artery, where buildup can attach more easily. Now here's something to think about. What contributes to this kind of inflammation? Things like poor diet, lack of movement, stress, and certain health conditions. And as we get older, these factors tend to accumulate. So inflammation becomes more common, and that increases the risk of plaque buildup even further. Now that you understand what's happening inside the body, let's shift our focus to something much more practical. What can you actually do about it? And I want to be very clear here. This is not about extreme changes. It's not about doing everything perfectly. It's about simple, realistic habits that you can maintain over time. Let's start with movement. You don't need intense workouts. In fact, for many people over 60, gentle movement is more effective. A daily walk, even for 20 to 30 minutes, can help keep your blood circulating. It's like keeping those pipes active and flowing. Now think about your meals. Heart-friendly eating doesn't mean complicated diets. It simply means choosing more natural, whole foods, foods that are closer to their original form, and reducing heavily processed or fried options. Another important piece is healthy fats. Not all fats are harmful. In fact, some fats, like those found in olive oil or nuts, can support better balance in your blood. Then there's sleep. This is often overlooked, but poor sleep can affect your blood pressure and increase inflammation. So getting consistent, restful sleep is more important than many people realize. And finally, stress. Let me ask you this. Do you often feel tense or overwhelmed? Chronic stress places strain on your heart. Simple practices, like sitting quietly, breathing deeply, or taking a few moments for yourself, can make a difference. Now let's make this even more practical. What foods can actually support your arteries? Leafy greens like spinach help your blood vessels function better. Fatty fish like salmon contain omega-3 fats, which support heart health. Berries provide antioxidants. These help protect your arteries from damage. Nuts offer healthy fats that support cholesterol balance. And oats can help reduce what we call bad cholesterol. You don't need to eat all of these at once. Just start by adding one or two into your routine. Now, you might be wondering, when will I start to notice a difference? And that's a very reasonable question. In the first few weeks, some people notice improved energy. After 1 to 2 months, daily activities may feel easier. And over several months, consistent habits can begin to support your heart and circulation more meaningfully. But the key here is consistency, not perfection. Consistency. Before we move to the conclusion, I want to say something important. If you have conditions like heart disease, diabetes, kidney problems, or high blood pressure, or if you are taking medications, please speak with your doctor before making significant changes. This ensures that any adjustments you make are safe and appropriate for you. Let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Clogged arteries do not develop overnight, and they don't improve overnight either. But here's the encouraging part. Your body is very responsive. It responds to small, consistent actions. A daily walk, better food choices, proper rest. These may seem simple, but over time, they can support your heart in meaningful ways. You don't have to change everything today. Just start with one small step, and then build from there. And before we finish, I'd like to hear from you. What stood out to you the most in today's discussion? Have you noticed any of these signs in your own life? Or is there a question you'd like me to answer in a future video? Go ahead and share it in the comments. I read them carefully, and your questions often shape what we talk about next.